I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV. Our guest today is Senior Chief Matthew Welsh, officer in charge of Station Brant Point. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's very nice to have you. Before we get into Station Brant Point and what it's all about,
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be where you are.
Oh, goodness. That's kind of a long story.
You can make it Reader's Digest version.
Right, I'll summarize. Grew up in Harwich, so I'm somewhat local. Graduated high school in '86 and wasn't sure what I was going to do. I've been a commercial fisherman and around the dock since I was 9 years old. Figured I'd give that a whirl.
Was your father involved in fishing?
My father was a fish cutter, and then my brothers were always fishing and everything. So got my first sight at the age of about 13, 14 on the Myrna-Loy, working with Cappy Smith out of Harwich. And things just kind of took off from there. But during the 80s, the fishing kind of went down a little bit, lots of new regulations, so I figured if I couldn't beat them, I'd join them. So when I was 25, I joined the service, and I figured I'd only do my 4, get out, get my GI Bill, but it didn't turn out that way. My first rescue, one of my first rescues, was a demasted sailboat off of Peaked Hill Bar, middle of a gale, and just arriving on scene and looking at the faces of the mom and the daughter and the son and the dad, that sold it for me. I said, I can do this.
It's a great story.
I can do this.
So where have you been with the Coast Guard?
Believe it or not, as far as stations and actual places, I've served on 3 large cutters, 270 foot, 2 270-foot cutters, the Escanaba. Most recently, the Campbell was my first ship, and I was also stationed on Eagle.
The sailing bark.
3 years. I was a mast captain, so I was the guy that got to yell at all the cadets. Stations, I was stationed at Station Provincetown, Station Chatham. Then I went to Escanaba, and I came back to Then I went to Eagle. Then I came back to Station Provincetown for a second time. Went to the Escanaba at that point, and then got my OIC certification, and then they gave me Station Milford Haven down in Virginia, in Hudgens, Virginia, and after that they gave me Nantucket. So,
how long have you been here now?
Just about 2.5 years.
How long is a term like this?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years. So I'm up in 16, and I think that may be the end of it. I don't know, because it's the tough part is I don't know that I could find a better place to be stationed.
Wow.
Everything else is going to be a step down.
That's true. That's true. Tell us a little bit about. Start with the mission of Station Brant Point. What is your core role?
Core role is search and rescue. That's kind of our bread and butter, but also law enforcement, marine environmental protection, marine mammal protection. So we kind of run the gamut of, if it's on the water, we try to respond to it.
And enforcement as well.
And, oh, absolutely, law enforcement. Yep.
The rescue, safety and search and rescue, is something that's always fascinated me. And you run from the sort of the mundane to the very hairy, I suspect.
To the extreme.
I guess you had one yesterday off the East Jetty.
We did.
Somebody ran into that jetty again.
Ejected 5 people, and it was very lucky that there was a good Samaritan on scene, and my boat was less than a quarter mile away. We were conducting training at the time, so we were able to respond fairly rapidly.
And they all were thrown out of the boat?
They were all ejected. No major injuries, thankfully. Some minor lacerations from my understanding, one that required some stitches.
Were they right up on the jetty?
They actually went over the jetty.
They went over the jetty.
Is my understanding of it, yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah.
New approach.
Well, it was high tide.
New approach, as they say.
Yes.
What kind? It was a small sailboat.
It was a small Zodiac. It was a tender from one of the larger motor yachts in the harbor.
So that was the temptation to go over the jetty instead of around.
Well, through the little cut there.
Oh, was it the? Oh, so
yeah,
it was the,
they were
it
trying
was
to
the
make
East
the
Jetty,
cut.
Yeah.
It was East Jetty. They were trying to make the cut, didn't quite make it. So,
Was there a strong tide running at the time?
wasn't too bad. And like I said, there was a good Samaritan on scene, and they did a great job, actually corralling the other boat because it was riderless and no operator on board since everyone was ejected, and they were able to also assist the people in the water. So they did a great job.
Great.
Yeah, they did phenomenal.
You have some civilian help, right?
I do.
And how do they help the Coast Guard?
We have what they call the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and they do. I love them. They do such a myriad of jobs for us. Most folks will think, oh, well, I need a boat to join the auxiliary, and you really don't. Being on the water, yes, you can, and you can assist with search and rescue, and you can assist with the fireworks displays and safety patrols and things of that nature, but there's so much more to it. We have auxiliarists that are cooks and can come in and cook for us. In fact, a good friend of mine who's an auxiliarist just is going to be taking a ride on Eagle as an auxiliarist to assist with their galley. We have folks that provide public boating safety education that's come in and stand communications watchstander for us.
So how many civilians altogether?
On this island, we've only got about 11, I think. Is where
And
we're
some
at.
of them are pilots, right?
So a lot of them are pilots, absolutely.
So they help with the search and rescue.
Oh, phenomenally. And in fact, last year when we had the gentleman that was lost off of GRS, our ox got underway, and they made 1 or 2 sorties for us during that and that was a 3-day search, and they did a great job.
Yeah.
And my last unit, believe it or not, I had 326 auxiliary members. I had over 120 surface assets and 12 air assets for one unit that supported
That's
my
a lot,
station.
yeah.
It was phenomenal.
I would think you'd be able to get more here if you publicized it.
I think it would be great, and we're not allowed to really go out and kind of recruit for them, but I love supporting them any way I can. They're phenomenal. They do such a great job. I can't say enough.
Yeah, that's great. How big is the area that's assigned to Station Brant Point for search?
Well, we
The
have
primary.
our primary AOR, area of responsibility, goes from the eastern shore of Martha's Vineyard.
Of Chappaquiddick, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Basically, we split the Nantucket Sound with Station Woods Hole and Station Chatham, and then out 50 nautical miles all the way around the island.
That's a good-sized area.
It's probably the largest area of any of the units in the Northeast.
Really?
So, yeah. As far as nautical square miles, yeah, absolutely.
That's, to get around to the south side of the island takes a while. Yeah, so that's where you need the planes.
Depends on the seas and the assets, but absolutely. If we can get an air asset up, it's phenomenal. It makes a world of difference. But even then, we still need to send a surface asset.
What's the most difficult search you've done since you've been here or been involved in? The hairiest, whatever, dangerous, whatever you want to ask, whatever you want to.
Since being assigned here, it hasn't been, knock on wood, hasn't been that crazy, which is great. Personally, in my career, on board Campbell, my very first unit, we had a 935-foot coal carrier that was on fire for 5 days, about 280 miles east of New Jersey. And that was in 25-foot seas. That was a little dicey.
And all you can do is try to rescue the crew, right, in a situation like that?
Well, they actually had, let's see, 4 or 5 H-60s come out, remove all the crew.
They're helicopters?
They're helicopters, I'm sorry. Yeah. And they removed all the crew with the exception of 4. There was the master, the chief engineer, senior navigator, and 1 crewman. And I'm the one that actually had to go over and get them out of there. And then we did try to fight the fire as best we can. It took us about 5 days to get it out, but it was amazing.
Stayed that
Sea
way?
stayed the same way.
Wow.
That's the only time I actually drove underneath a 270-foot cutter, because as the cutter would come out of the water and her bow would go down, her stern would come out. And on the boat deck, I would actually slip underneath with the props turned, and it was kind of crazy.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, and I did that with one engine, because my starboard engine gave way about a half an hour into it. But there's some other craziness.
Than a lot of us.
But that was a crazy one.
Yeah. How many people are stationed at Brant Point?
Right now, I've got 25 personnel, and they're phenomenal.
And how many actually would engage in a search operation if you had a major one?
If we had a major one, we'd be all hands on deck. And however, there's always a crew ready to go. I would say during any given day, it would take us about 7 minutes to launch. In the evenings, it would take us no less than 12 to 15 minutes to launch. But there's always a ready boat crew.
But you have a bunch of people who live out in Low Beach, right? So
Correct,
they have to get here and get to town.
But they're usually on recall. If they're not on duty, they're in a recall status. So if something big were to go down, we'd be able to take initial action with our primary boat crew, and then we'd be able to recall. And we'd be able to right now we're able to field probably 4 boat crews, which is phenomenal actually for a small boat station.
That's good. How many boats do you have?
I have 3 247-foot motor lifeboats. Those are the ones that people like to think that roll over. The idea is not to roll them. You don't want to do that. We try to avoid that. And then one 25-foot response boat, small. So
that's the one that looks like a Zodiac.
Yeah, that's the little orange one that goes really fast, and it looks great. So.
In terms of enforcement of boating regulations and so forth, obviously most of your enforcement work is with recreational boaters. Do they tend to be pretty observant of the rules or not?
I'll tell you, for the Nantucket community, and I try to explain this to my bosses, because we don't really run a whole lot of cases every year. We run around 30, maybe 40 cases. But this community is so different. They have such a weather eye, as we would call it. Their lives are around the water. They don't usually make foolish mistakes. And most of them are very, very good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have the given...
Yeah. There's always one.
dummy that comes out and decides to rent a boat, and all right. But...
There's a marvelous story. There used to be a guy who ran a boat livery here named Sterling Yerxa many, many, many years ago. He also had the Madigan boatyard at one period of time. And he had big cat boats, which he would use to occasionally take people to the Cape. Nice. I mean, I don't know what they were, 30 feet or something like that.
Right.
And one time the fog was in, there were no ferries because there was no radar in those days. And one of my brothers was working for him as a boat boy, basically. The fog was, that far away. He put my brother up on the bow, I guess leaning against the mast, to be his radar.
Outstanding.
And he had very thick glasses, and he kept going like this on his glasses to get the fog off them. And he said to my brother regularly, "Do you see anything? Do you see anything?" And my brother would say no. He hit Woods Hole on the nose. On the nose.
There you go. That's called potato navigation. That's where you grab a sack of potatoes. So long as you hear a splash, you're okay.
That's great.
Right?
Well, thank you for coming and sharing some of your life with us and the life of Station Brant Point.
Well,
and
thank you so much.
I'm going to take the opportunity, if you tell me who they should get in touch with, to put in a plug for the auxiliary.
Either Carl England or Maurice Gibbs or any of the guys over there. They're phenomenal. So
well, if
they'd all be able to help you out.
Okay. If you'd like to help the Coast Guard here and have an interest in being on or near the water, call Carl England or Maurice Gibbs or one of the other members of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, because they could use your help. Absolutely. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for having me.